Hello everyone, welcome to AP Environmental Science. I'm Mrs. Schilling and I will be your teacher, your guide through this course. So you should have done chapters 1 and 2 over the summer break. Please see me if you have not finished those and we can make sure that you get those done by the time the first grading period is over. But for now we're going to start with chapter 3, Ecosystem Ecology. Alright, and so what we're going to do is, I'm never going to lecture in class. I'm only going to lecture here on these videos. And as I go through, I'm going to have different sticky notes ready to go that are kind of going to be in place of what would normally be a lecture, and you're going to listen to those at night, and then you're going to come to class and we're going to talk about it, make sure you don't have any questions, and then we're going to get straight to some awesome lab activities. So once you get your book, you should also have some sticky notes ready to go, and you're going to want to take notes kind of like I have here in on these pages. Now you don't have to have the YouTube ones. I might also have some different quote ones in different colors. Really all you need to worry about is the green ones, okay? Now I will randomly have extra credit available for those of you who have done all of your sticky notes and bring them on quiz day. That'll be a great way to get some extra credit. Alright, so let's get started. We have Ecosystem Ecology, Chapter 3. Our first introduction is always a different kind of case study. So I feel like case studies are really important in learning environmental science because they show us kind of what's going on in the world and what's happened in the past so that we can make sure we don't make these same mistakes again. So this case study is from Haiti. The picture over here is really cool, I think, because it shows just how incredible the deforestation in Haiti has become. Over here is the Dominican Republic side. You can see there's lots of trees. It's very green. Haiti is way more desertified. That's actually a word. And because they have, like I say on my sticky note, I've kind of summarized it. So the people of Haiti wanted to use firewood to create charcoal, okay, because charcoal isn't like a regular coal like you think of that's mining. It's actually come from burning up firewood, and then they use that charcoal for fuel. So the more people that they have, that's what that person means, the higher demand is going to be, and the less forest there's going to be available, because as you keep using and using and using and using, you're not going to have very many available. Okay, so they use this method of deforestation called clear cutting. We're going to talk more about that in chapter 10. But when you clear cut something and you just cut everything down, you don't leave anything, what happens is the tree roots can't anchor the soil. So that means that most of the time tree roots and other kinds of plant roots are the things that are holding the soil together. Now without those trees holding everything together, there's something happens called erosion, which means everything is sliding down mountains, it's getting really muddy, there's avalanches, there's landslides, mudslides, there's villages destroyed, all kinds of crazy stuff. So after we learned about all of this stuff, it came to be the solution was to plant mango trees. Now mango trees give the people of Haiti an economic incentive, which means that now they have a reason to leave the trees because the mangoes are actually even more lucrative than the charcoal was. Okay, and lucrative means that it makes more money. Okay, they're also pushing hard for alternative fuel efforts to make sure that we're not relying on this charcoal so we can let some of these trees get back to work. Now, if you look on my YouTube playlist, the first one is Haiti's Legacy of Environmental Disaster. It's a video by the New York Times, so check that out if you'd like to know more information. Now, at this point, you can pause, you can make sure you have your sticky note ready to go, you can rewind if you don't understand what I was saying, before we move on. Okay, so that's what's kind of nice about lecturing on sticky notes instead of in class. All right, so ecosystems, you should know this from biology, so this probably won't take very long. An ecosystem, particular location with a certain mix of biotic and abiotic components. Hopefully you remember that biotic means living, abiotic means non-living. Okay, so Our biotic factors that determine what kind of an ecosystem we've got. We have biodiversity, which is going to be your BFF for the rest of the year. We have birds, mammals, plants, trees and flowers, insects, fungi, bacteria. Okay, those are all living. Fun fact, viruses not living. Okay, so we don't want to count those in the biotic section over here. Abiotic, and abiotic is what actually determines what can actually live there. Okay, so if I'm in a desert, I'm not going to have a polar bear because the abiotic factors like the temperature, sunlight, soil type, water, all of those are wrong for a polar bear. Okay, so more abiotic factors are going to be sunlight, temperature, pH, soil type, water, and nutrients. Now, if you notice I'm abbreviating some of these words, it's an excellent note-taking skill to be able to abbreviate, so I encourage you to do it whenever you can. You'll see me do it a lot. Okay, so here's a cave ecosystem in the book. We know that they have very distinct boundaries. Okay, so let's talk about a few ecosystem boundaries real quick. Okay, now some ecosystems have very well-defined boundaries, like this cave that we talked about on the previous page, because there's an entrance, there's an exit, there's only one. Okay, so nothing's really flowing through. It's really only flowing in or out. Okay, so everything there is going to be self-contained. Little goes in or out, like I said. There's a lot of really cool cave species that have evolved to not really need a whole lot of sunlight, kind of like the species at the bottom of the ocean have evolved to not really use sunlight either. So those are really super cool ecosystems. However, most ecosystem boundaries are not well defined. They're very subjective, which means there's no hard boundary. It's kind of just like our dotted line here around this Yellowstone National Park. Okay, these are kind of a man-made boundary. Okay, so the ecosystem might be the same on both sides of the boundary, but man have come off and said, hey, this is Yellowstone, this is not, because the national parks have lots of different rules about what you can do there. Okay, so we have national parks, our human-defined boundaries. We have ranges of species, like all these species you see here. We have different topography, which means mountains. We have a lot of different ranges and sizes of ecosystems. We have large ones like Yellowstone. We have small, like this puddle here. This is a teeny tiny puddle in a tree branch. Okay, so that's a teeny tiny small ecosystem. Okay, and these are not man defined. Okay, they're naturally defined. All right, if you notice, your checkpoint questions will be exactly the same as the ones that are on your WISC form on Google Drive, your watch, summarize, and question. Okay, so these are going to be your summarized questions. All right, now here's another thing from, hopefully you remember from biology, which is going to be photosynthesis. Okay, we're using solar energy to convert carbon dioxide and water into glucose. Okay, glucose is a potential energy, which means it's stored in your body until you need it. Okay, so the chemical formula, very important for us to know. Sunlight plus 6 waters plus 6 carbon dioxides yields, that's what this arrow means, yields glucose and 6 oxygens. Now, we have this law of conservation of matter, which means that what comes in needs to be the same as what goes out. That's why we have 6 H2s, so 2 times 6 is 12, same as over here. So we have 12 hydrogens here, 12 hydrogens here. That's what I mean by the law of conservation of matter. Okay, autotrophs and producers are the only ones who are actually performing photosynthesis. It is essential to life. It's the only natural process that creates oxygen. Okay, so this is the only way we're going to get oxygen. This is the only way we're going to have the evolution of life. Now, respiration, everybody does. You do it, plants even do it. Okay, animals do it, fish do it. Okay, this is going to be respiration. Unlocks energy by converting glucose and oxygen into energy, carbon dioxide, and water. It's basically the reverse process. Okay, so glucose and 6 oxygens yields 6 carbon dioxides, 6 waters, and usable energy, usually in the form of ATP. Okay, like I said, all organisms perform these that are alive, including bacteria. Producers perform respiration at night because they still need energy. Okay, but they don't have any sun to produce photosynthesis, so they've got to use respiration. Okay. Here's another YouTube video. A couple of figures that are really important to know is going to be this photosynthesis respiration figure and this food chain. Okay, we're going to talk about this here in a second. We're going to make some food chains in class. It's going to be awesome. Okay, so let's talk about some trophic levels. Okay, trophic levels, troph means to consume. So these are going to be different levels of consumers. Okay, so the trophic levels are good for visual of energy and matter movement. Okay, so we use trophic levels, we use food webs kind of like this guy, okay, to see the movement of energy and matter. Okay, now we have our food chain. Usually we think of things in chains like we did on this page right here. So here's a good example of a food chain. The energy is moving towards the higher levels. Okay, however, what's more natural, okay, is this idea of a food web, which is more of this figure here of the Serengeti. Okay, you might be reminded of the Lion King. Okay, because we like to see different relationships. Sometimes people are tertiary consumers, secondary consumers, primary consumers, even omnivores. Okay, it gets a little crazy. So it's way easier to think of something in a food web. Okay, so primary producers, that's going to be our autotrophs. Herbivores are going to be what eat them. Secondary consumers are going to be what eat those primary consumers, and tertiary eats secondary. Okay, so if we think of this, grasses, that's going to be our primary producers. See, it's green. Then we have the rabbit. That's a primary producer or primary consumer. He's the one who's going to eat the grass. Okay, so the energy is flowing towards the rabbit because he's actually consuming the energy from the grass. Okay, and then the cheetah is going to eat the rabbit, so that means he is a secondary consumer. Okay, so it can go a bunch of different ways. We can go to lions, we can go to vultures. Now vultures are going to be something weird. Okay, he's brown, which means he's a scavenger. He is a carnivore that consumes the dead. Okay, that's a little bit different than a detritivore. Detritus is actually dead stuff. So detritivores are the ones who break down the dead tissues and waste and actually eats the detritus. And then decomposers are the last round, and they finish breakdown and recycling everything. So over here are detritivores. Let's see, our orange is our dung beetle over here, and then we have our decomposers, our bacteria, fungi, and earthworms. Okay, now common misconceptions. I do like to take a lot of common misconceptions and make sure everybody understands what's going on. Heterotrophs and herbivores are not the same. Okay, so organisms can be split up into two different categories, producers and consumers. Producers are autotrophs, consumers are heterotrophs. Now the heterotroph family can be divided into herbivore, omnivore, scavenger, carnivore. Okay, but autotroph is just autotroph. Okay, so heterotroph and herbivore are not the same. Herbivore is a kind of heterotroph. Okay, so hopefully that makes a little more sense. Now I've also had some stars here, some suggestions for your review book, but we'll talk about that later. Please do not write in your books, okay? All right, now ecosystem productivity. So productivity means, just like if I'm thinking about productivity from a car point of view, I'm going to think of productivity in an ecosystem as how much life it can support. Okay, so in a car factory, productivity will be how many cars are we making per day. Okay, this is going to be how much life an ecosystem can support. So we have two kinds here. We have GPP and NPP. So GPP is gross primary productivity. Okay, so GPP, gross primary productivity. NPP is net primary productivity. Okay, so you can think of gross and net kind of like a paycheck. Your gross is what you earn, and your net is actually what you take home after taxes and stuff. For example, I pay taxes, I pay Social Security, I pay into my retirement fund, and then whatever's left over after that, then that's what I actually get paid. Okay, that's what they actually put in my account. That's the net. Okay, so the gross primary productivity here is the total energy that can be captured by producers. Okay, so from the sun, how much energy can producers capture from the sun? Now, NPP is that GPP minus the respiration done by producers at night. Okay? So, the GPP, gross primary productivity, also known as carbon dioxide, is the carbon dioxide taken up in the sunlight plus the carbon dioxide produced in the dark. Okay, so you can either think it as positive, as this addition equation, or as this NPP equals GPP minus respiration equation. We will probably use it both ways. Another way to really get involved in this equation is to think about this. I really love this, which is why I put a star next to it for my review book. Okay, so the sun's putting out energy constantly. Okay, 99% of that is just instantly deflected. Okay, and it's not absorbed. It's not absorbed by producers. It's just reflected. Okay, now 1% of solar energy is captured by photosynthesis. Okay, and that's that GPP. Okay, now 60% of that is lost to respiration, and you're left with about 40%. Okay, so that leftover is actually going to be what is going to be helping producers grow and reproduce. Okay, so they're only getting about 40% of 1%. So it's like 0.4% of all the sun's energy is actually going to be used for growth and reproduction. Okay, and that's the stuff that's also going to be passed on to the next trophic level. Okay, so here's an example. Okay, kind of what I went through with the figure. 1% of the sun's energy is taken up by plants. 60% is used for the producer's respiration at night. 40%, also known as the net primary productivity, is used for growth and reproduction. So, I have an example from a North American forest. Now, there's a ton of trees there, right? There's so many trees there. So, we're going to talk about it in terms of kilograms of carbon per square meter per year. Okay, so that's what all of these numbers mean down here. Kilograms of carbon per square meters per year. Okay, so if I have 2.5 kilograms of carbon per meter squared per year, okay, that's my GPP, and they use 1.5 of those for respiration, I'm left with 1 kilogram of carbon per square meter per year. Okay, and that's actually quite a lot. NPP varies by ecosystem. If you look at this graph up here, okay, it shows the productivity. So swamps and marshes actually are even more awesomely productive than rainforest. Most people always think rainforest. Actually, no. Okay, swamps and marshes. Okay, because they have a lot of water and they have a lot of plants. Okay, and not very many herbivores. Marine ecosystems, coral reefs. Okay, marine means saltwater. Okay, coral reefs are the most productive out of those. Okay, and if you notice, we still have, this one's actually measured in grams. Okay, so 2,000 grams would be 2 kilograms. All right. Last page here for our first day. All right, now we want to know our energy transfer efficiency. So how efficiently is energy being transferred from one trophic level to the next? So how efficiently is this grass being transferred to this zebra? And how efficiently is his energy being transferred to this lion? Okay, so biomass, bio should be familiar, it means life. Mass is mass, okay? The total mass of living matter in an area. Okay, so sometimes you also can think of that as NPP. Now the standing crop is not always the same as the biomass. Okay, the standing crop is going to be the amount of energy in a system at a given time. Okay, so over time it can change. Like, for example, in our Haiti example, during the spring, when all the new trees are growing, that's going to be more and more and more standing crop. But then when the people come down and they cut everything down, then the standing crop is not going to be as high. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. Now, your standing crop versus your productivity, okay, which is your rate of energy production. In your slow-growing forest, you're going to have low productivity, okay, but your standing crop is going to be high. Now, that's because there's only a certain amount of plants that are going to be able to get energy from the sun, especially if there's a lot of canopy cover. So if you're in a super shady forest, that stuff on the ground isn't going to get very much sun, so it's not going to be as productive. Okay? Versus oceanic algae is going to be high productivity because algae is always really close to the surface. However, it's going to be a really low standing crop because algae does not weigh very much. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. Now, our ecological efficiency is going to be our proportion of consumed energy that can be passed through trophic levels. Okay, this is LVLS, levels. Okay, now in general we think of the 10% rule. Hopefully you remember that from biology. We're going to do some calculations where it's not exactly 10%, but most of the time it's going to be 10%. Okay, so our trophic pyramid is going to be representing the distribution of biomass. Okay, so we have our producers, which is at 10,000 joules, just like over here. Okay, basically copied this figure into my sticky note. Then if we go up a trophic level, we're going to go down to 1,000 joules because 1,000 joules is 10% of 10,000. Okay, and that's going to be our primary consumers. And then if we go 10% of 1,000, we get 100. Okay, for that lion. Now on the side it says biomass and energy decrease up the pyramid. Okay, so the best way to get energy actually is to eat a lot of grass or vegetables or anything that grows out of the ground. Okay, as you start to eat higher and higher in the trophic levels, you're going to need to consume more to get the same amount of energy. Okay? Now, I kind of did this in a grid from the human diet. Okay? 1 acre of cropland can go 2 ways. We can either grow soybeans on that land or we can grow cows for meat. Okay? Now, because of our 10% rule, okay, if I have 10% efficiency, right away I have 1,000 kilograms of soybeans where I'd only have 100 kilograms of meat. Okay, and if that 1,000 kilograms can feed humans right away, okay, instead of having soybeans to feed the meat, to feed the humans, okay, too many different steps. Okay, more calories for less volume. Okay, so 1 kilogram of soybeans is 2 times the calories of meat. Okay, so 1 acre of soybeans will produce 10 times more food and 25 times more calories than 1 acre of cows or chickens or whatever. Okay, so this is going to come back to us a bunch when we talk about different uses for land, because if we have a bunch of people that are hungry and they have an extra acre, we're probably going to tell them, hey, you need to grow a plant there so that you can feed more people and have more food. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. You'll have these 3 more checkpoint questions in your whisk chart. All right, this is my first video. Hopefully it went okay, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow.